all of you at your watch parties who are joining us from home. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have all of you. We estimate that with the people that registered this morning, that we will probably have around 125 people, and hopefully more than that, depending on the size of your watch parties. There are a few churches that we have not seen connect yet, so we are going to get started to keep everybody on schedule. A couple of things. I know in the past, some people have said it's a long morning. Yes, it is. And it's a very important morning with a lot of information from wonderful speakers. So if you need to get up and refresh your coffee, use the restroom, do so. And it's totally fine. We will be taking a break between the speakers. So do what you need to do to, if you need to stand, move around, that's totally fine. We will be at the end having a survey that we want everyone at watch parties, and those online will get an email with a survey. There will be a call to action. So pay attention, because you will want to have at least one thing that you are going to do after you hear the call to action, and our wonderful speakers tell us what the issues are and why we need to, as United Women in Faith, do something. Not just learn about it, but take action. So our next person that we're going to introduce via video is our president of Wisconsin United Women in Faith, Gloria Carter. And Lisa will start that presentation. Thank you.
Oh, here.
Issues that are important in women's lives.
I'm going to go ahead and start that over for you all.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us at our Social Action Day. This is a day for learning and discussing issues that are important in women's lives. These are issues that impact us all. Use what you learned today to put your faith into action. We have important work to do. Thanks for being a part of that.
Thank you for that presentation, Gloria. I know Gloria is joined at the Lodi Watch Party, so she can be with other members, and we are happy for that. Next, I'd like to invite our spiritual growth leader, Linda Caprignello. Linda has again prepared a wonderful devotion to get us centered for our program today.
Good morning, just in time. My goodness, of all mornings, I'm having a little computer glitches. Does that ever happen to anyone else? Of course, yes. So my son and daughter-in-law came to the rescue. So good to be with you. As I learned of this morning's program, I did a little digging and to find what could I learn myself, and then find something meaningful to share with you. And I think I landed on something that I hope you will all enjoy as I have. It is actually written by an unnamed author, and it was found in She Reads Truth, which is something I discovered. She reads truth.com might be another source of some information for you. She wrote right away, her devotion title caught my eye. It's called Injustice and Justice, which is what we are here to sort this all out, aren't we? So would you be in meditation and devotion with me as I read her story? Some moments have a ripple effect. as a thrown stone breaks the glassy surface of water, causing rings to swell and radiate to the shore. Some moments break through us, and the ripples radiate for days, months, even a lifetime. Years ago, a distinguished professor who'd been visiting our church agreed to come lead our small group for the evening. I don't remember his initial topic, but as we lingered in conversation, the discussion soon turned to his travels, specifically his time in India. Tears filled his eyes as he recounted the crushing poverty and mind-boggling crowds of men and women and their children begging in the streets all around him. His voice trembled as he described the enormity of human suffering he'd witnessed there. The heartbreaking stories he shared left mental images of miles of poverty and millions of suffering souls. After the meeting, I pulled the professor aside and confessed how utterly overwhelmed I was after hearing his stories. I shared how I'd been strangely burdened by the concept of suffering since I was a young girl. How can this be? I asked him. Where is God in the midst of all of this? And how on earth can we even begin to enter in and respond to such enormous injustice and suffering? The mild-mannered, soft-spoken professor snapped his head toward me, his eyes piercing and focused. No, he declared. Being overwhelmed by suffering is no excuse for doing nothing. He explained that there will always be more need than we can meet. But that does not mean we aren't called to enter in and do the things that we are able to do right now. His words landed hard. They felt like a rebuke, because they were. To be paralyzed by the harsh reality of suffering, to be struck inwardly, condemning global injustice, doing nothing to alleviate it, is not an option God gives us. God doesn't sugarcoat the pain and brokenness of the world. He calls out evil, suffering, and injustice, as I found in Proverbs 6:16 through 19. He shines a light on those who are lonely, abandoned, oppressed, and poor, as we find in James chapter 1, verse 27. He knows the desperation, the circumstances, and the darkness we encounter, both in global proportions and in our most intimate and personal daily struggles, as in Psalm 139, verse 12. Our God knows we need rescue, and Christ scandalously declares in Luke 4:18-19, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And I would add that the Spirit of the Lord is also upon us this day as we gather in his name. And so, because he has solidarity with us, we also can offer solidarity to the hurting. Because he defends us, we can defend others. Because he is our ultimate judge, we can fight for justice. Because he is our hope, we can hold on to hope for ourselves and extend it to others. Christ entered in to rescue us, and the ripple effect of that rescue goes on and on and on. Thanks be to God alone.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Wonderful message, Linda. And we so appreciate your work as spiritual growth leader. Judge Mitchell has just joined us, so this is wonderful timing. Can you hear us, Judge?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you quite clearly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we are very blessed to have two outstanding people who are doing so much work to help our situation in Wisconsin with mass incarceration and the harm that we see done to so many juveniles, to women, to pregnant women, to men, to our communities of color. And I know that you are going to learn a lot today from our speakers. I first encountered a woman who was pregnant in the emergency room 20 years ago, who the emergency doctor, before I was able to arrive, I was on call and asked to come see her. Pregnant woman who was with her 2-year-old and her husband, both of whom had jobs. And she had asked for help because she was taking some of her mother's Percocet. Before I arrived, they had called the police and they were ready to take her away, which they did. I actually went to circuit court or to the court in Racine on 2 occasions to testify for her care, obstetrical care, which she was not receiving, and to get her released. We have seen this so often. And one of my colleagues now is actually doing some research with Department of Health Services and our maternal mortality review team to understand the impact that it has, since we have seen so many women who have died during or shortly after pregnancy who have had a history of incarceration. This has called me to do this work. In my work as a physician, I heard Judge Mitchell speak at the Wisconsin Society of Addiction Medicine, and I was so impressed with how he is doing his work from the bench to make a difference in the lives of so many people. Judge Mitchell has many roles. He is the senior pastor of Christ the Solid Rock Baptist Church, and he has been there for almost 13 years. He is an adjunct professor at the University of Wisconsin Law School, but he is the presiding judge over the juvenile division in Dane County. He is also has an incredible educational background. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics and Religion from Morehouse College, Master of Divinity and Master of Theology from Princeton Theological Seminary, and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is a father and is married to the love of his life, Dr. Manka Zama Mitchell. And we are, one of his quotes that I found online was, "Justice is not what you say, justice is what you do." So with great honor and gratitude, I present Judge Honorable Reverend Everett Mitchell.
All right. Thank you all so much. And thank you for the opportunity to be here with you all today. It is a esteemed privilege. I see we got Eau Claire in here and there's some other places throughout the state. So just good morning to everyone. And I hope you can hear me okay. And I will have a couple of videos that I'll highlight today. So hopefully you have you'll hear some of the videos, but I'm grateful to be here. My commitment, not only to the work that I do, but having a bivocational work where I am a judge, but also a pastor means that I get to infuse a lot of the work that I do and a belief that I have in my faith into my work so that, we are trying to produce a generation of people who love justice. And that's that phrase, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God? That's why I say justice is not what you say, it's what you do. And we are to be making sure that we do justice. And that is what we'll be thinking about this morning. So what I've prepared for you really is a way to talk about one of the things that I'm very passionate about, which is the disruption of the child welfare to juvenile delinquency to adult prison pipeline. And it's an important piece for me because without that, I think we lose the capacity to understand the depth of the issues that we see happening within our community. And so today really is about sharing with you these ideas and really sharing with you philosophy and then what we've done to overcome some of those barriers that we see and then transform the lives of so many young people so that we're not doing what I know we are here to fight against, which is the over-incarceration of folks of color in our state. But everything that I do is grounded in some beliefs and belief system. One of the great pioneer attorneys is Bryan Stevenson, and I love this quote from him when he said, "We've submitted to the harsh instinct to crush those among us whose brokenness is most visible, but simply punishing the broken and walking away from them or hiding them from sight only ensures that they remain broken, and we do too." It's the idea that sometimes criminal justice is done in the shadows. It's done in a way that people are invisible because there's no intersection of relationships between communities. Then people can just disappear and nobody knows where they are, mainly because there's never been a relationship cemented for them to even know. So, so I'm always thinking that hiding them, hiding individuals, hiding communities, even those who've been incarcerated, remains that our society continues to remain broken throughout that process. Another quote that I love is from Frederick Douglass. It's the idea that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men and women. So the idea that if we're really going to make a dent on, recidivism and the changes in our society, it comes from an idea that we really should be out front to making sure that we're building the strong children that we need to have. Like just yesterday when I was, we call a reverse waiver hearing where they want to waive a 15-year-old into adult court so that he has to deal with adult consequences. In the report, one of the things that it said was that this young man who's 15 years old, who's committed a lot of crimes, finally was revealed that he has a 3rd grade reading level and a 4th grade math level at 15 years old. And where he's at right now, they only give him assignments in a Chromebook and a worksheet. And then they wonder why he can't independently do his work. Well, he can't read and he can't do math independently because, he can't do the work. And so it's those kind of things, like if we really do want to make an impact on the overall, justice system, then we have to make sure that we're building up strong generations that have the competencies that they need in order for them to be thoroughly successful in the long term. And so, one of the things that we always talk about is that, Wisconsin still remains one of the worst states in terms of racial disparities, especially as it relates to the juvenile justice system. And it's not, how do we address that? How do we deal with the reality of what we see being brought before our court systems continues to be a unique challenge for us. And so I think, what we want to do often is to make sure that we're addressing juvenile justice system from a way that is both humane and equitable at the same time. We continue to see Wisconsin right there, right up under, the top states with the largest Black to white disparity in juvenile justice. You see Wisconsin is always, second, behind New Jersey. It's one of those things that we want to make sure that we are, being thoughtful about, not hidden and don't hide it, but really trying our best to be proactive in addressing some of those disparities so that we don't lead, at least don't come second in the nation on those kind of disparities. One of the things that when I teach my class and my students, one of the things I'm most known for is stressing the idea that we know about the school to prison pipeline. What I want to educate our communities on is on the child welfare to juvenile delinquency to adult prison pipeline, which is basically where we're passing traumatized children from one system to the next and not getting them the resources and help that they need. So when I say that, it means that most people, unless you work in the system, really don't have any idea how the child welfare system operates. They really don't have any idea how the juvenile justice system operates. We have some idea about the adult criminal justice system, mainly because it is visible and it's open to the public. These other two systems are very confidential. And so because they're confidential, it's hard to get data and real-time work and support to get them, to get, our communities aware of what it looks like and how it looks. And so because of that, most of us, most community members don't understand that for the majority of the movement in our systems, a lot of the men and women who end up in the adult criminal justice system were already known to the system because they started in the child welfare system, picked up juvenile justice cases, and then ended up in the adult system. So we look at things like pervasive poverty, that inadequate health and mental health care, gaps in early childhood education, some of the education outcomes similar to the young man I told you about, chronic abuse and neglect cases that happen over years. And then once these young children, as young as the age of 2 and 3, get to 10 years old in Wisconsin, they could start to be criminally charged in the juvenile justice system. So 10 years old, I always give my students 10, 14, 17. 10 years old is when they can be criminally charged. 14 years old is when they can be waived into adult court, and 17 years old is when they are automatically sent into the adult criminal justice system. So the advocacy sometimes is trying to keep 17-year-olds from being in a space where, or at least raise the age to 18 so that we don't have young 17-year-old children facing the possibility of adult offenses. But this is a continuum that I talk about a lot, and then think about different strategies to break that up over time are still very, very, very important to me. When I became a judge, one of the things that I realized is like a lot of the things that we were trauma informed, a lot of people have been to trauma trainings, but the practices that we were implementing were not trauma informed. So you had young people come in courts in restraints and handcuffs and belts. Adults rarely listen to children. The idea of trauma, when do you deal with trauma? How do you deal with trauma? Was something that a lot of the adults wanted the young people to deal with the trauma on their timetables rather than addressing the trauma when they have available resources and feel safe. We saw children being sent to Lincoln Hills that were unnecessarily brought to Lincoln Hills. We will see significant mental health concerns, a lot of young people who were not able to timely receive their mental health. And then we saw a lot of use of shortened school days with the young people who were being placed on IEPs, but yet having a shortened school day. And basically a shortened school day is a reduction in the normal time that children are given instruction within a building. So some of the young people, especially according involved with IEPs, were sometimes only going to school for 2 hours a day at most, and most of them were not inside the educational buildings. Most of them were outside in the community somewhere else. So we had a lot in trauma-informed people, but within the system itself, the practices that we were implementing were not trauma-informed. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do was focus in on what are ways that we can transform the narrative so that we can refocus our attention on what is happening with our young people. One of the ways that I've tried to do that is through media. I think media is a good platform for us to be able to use to help implement what it is that people need to see. And what I'm about to show you a clip of is a documentary called Not Enough Apologies, Trauma Stories. And it was a wonderful and courageous opportunity for the young man to give us permission to film his case so that his story could be told. So that he captures this idea of what I mean when I say child welfare, juvenile delinquency to adult prison pipeline. So we'll watch this clip of this for a little bit, and then we can continue on with the presentation.
show up, your father didn't show up.
Trauma that they're enduring just seems to be more severe and more long-lasting.
Never said I'm sorry.
And I am still working through things that happened to me when I was 10.
There's ghosts in the nursery. I literally didn't know what to do.
You know, people say, well, you don't have enough time.
If we could go back in time, maybe.
That's all we have.
I don't think giving up is really an option.
There's not enough apologies that one could give to say, I'm sorry, sorry.
Funding for Not Enough Apologies Trauma Stories was provided by Focus Fund for Journalism and Friends of Wisconsin Public Television.
All rise.
So much pain, so much pain, so much brokenness.
Dane County Juvenile Court Judge Everett Mitchell says when he first took the bench in 2016, his days would often end in tears, his own tears.
As I started listening to these children and reading their stories and letting them talk to me, I started realizing like there's been nobody in their lives. And every adult that's been in their life has caused them more and more pain.
Mitchell presides over cases of children who've been removed from their homes for dangerous circumstances, including abuse and neglect, and cases where children are charged with the juvenile equivalent of crimes.
At the onset, very traumatized children who experience all sorts of trauma from removal, home, abuse, neglect. It's not always clear that they're able to get the resources and the help they need to process all that pain. So it starts with emotional outbursts, and those emotional outbursts turn into disorderly conducts.
Mitchell says he sees a steady progression of the same juveniles catching adult criminal charges. He calls it the child welfare to adult prison pipeline.
We're going to take the handcuffs off.
On this day, the courtroom door opens to a case in point. Bailiffs bring in a boy held in the juvenile detention center who looks much younger than his 16 years. The judge orders the boy's handcuffs removed. It's an effort, he says, to try to change what it's like to be a child in the system.
We know these children are traumatized. We knew that they were in pain. It made no sense to indiscriminately bring them into the courtroom in handcuffs.
Awesome.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Better today?
Yeah.
I came to see you.
Long before he appeared in this courtroom, the boy lived a life of relentless adverse childhood experiences. In the child welfare system since the age of 5, first as a victim of 23 reports of physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, living in institutions since he was 9, group homes, foster homes, treatment centers, juvenile prison, more than 30 placements. I don't have anybody, he told a social worker. A court transcript reads that at the age of 10 years old, he could not understand why his mother would not want to see him. It says, while living in a foster home, the boy's mother told him she was coming to visit. Testimony showed he walked around for 2 days with his backpack, looking out and watching for his mother to come and visit with him. But she never showed up.
And he wasn't getting treatment, and I think
And now he's before a judge with his own public defender sitting next to him in court.
That's not what happened. I don't think that anybody entered the world predisposed to sell drugs or steal cars necessarily in the nature versus nurture debate. How did that 12-year-old who may not even be able to touch the ground with his feet, how did they end up in that chair?
As children become teenagers, criminal charges can amass, as in this case. State Representative Evan Goyke plainly connects trauma to incarceration. State statistics show 98% of incarcerated youth have experienced trauma.
The vast majority of juveniles that are in custody tonight had some kind of child welfare intervention when they were younger, likely where that trauma was experienced.
For his part, Mitchell sends children to the state juvenile correctional facilities sparingly. In fact, the judge ordered the boy before him here removed from Lincoln Hills when the teenager wrote to him complaining about repeatedly being jumped and beaten up at the prison.
because, you know, he was just getting beat up too bad. I brought him here the first time, and nobody showed up from his family to take custody of from him.
There are a lot of juveniles that have been incarcerated at substandard facilities, and we see the evidence through the high recidivism rate. We see that that program doesn't work by the fact that they continue to engage in criminal and risky behavior. If the facility was working, that number would be lower.
And yet, what to do in the face of continued criminal and risky behavior, like the alleged behavior of the 16-year-old before Judge Mitchell? This police pursuit video shows a chase and crash on a Madison highway in February of 2018. According to prosecutors, the teen before Judge Mitchell was the driver of the stolen car involved. As a result, prosecutors in court that day told the judge they deemed the juvenile a danger to public safety.
I think that the safety of the community should be a paramount consideration here, and that at this point we have enough of a track record just in the recent months that every time we have released him, we have had new victims, we've had new crimes.
There is conflict between acknowledging a person's traumatized background and holding them accountable for their actions, especially when those actions can be crimes. Mental health police officer Andrew Muir confronts deep trauma in the communities he serves.
We see horrible things. We see horrible abuse. We see horrible neglect. But we encounter some kids with really profound traumas at such an early age that it impacts brain development, let alone their relationship with almost anyone. The catch-22, if you will, for law enforcement and being trauma-informed is that there's only a certain extent to which we can compensate for that based on sort of our very nature and what we exist for.
That being to protect and serve public safety.
Thank you. And I'll call therapists and see if we can get it.
Prosecutors in juvenile court lamented that every time the boy before Judge Mitchell was released, he committed new crimes. One new crime landed the 16-year-old in court again,
appalling childhood.
this time in adult court on felony charges.
Count 1 is a serious charge. Attempted first-degree intentional homicide, use of dangerous weapon. If convicted with the enhancer, defendant faces 65 years in prison.
Judge Mitchell says this case that started as a child in need of protection and services leaves him broken.
This is to me like the worst CHIPS case ever, you know, because he's alone. And not only is he alone now he's alone facing adult consequences for some of the choices that he got involved in with some of his friends. He falls into this unique place where I don't think all of his needs have been taken care of, and I know all of his treatment needs have not been addressed, and there's not enough apologies that one could give to say, I'm sorry for what your mother didn't show up, or how your father didn't show up, or how families didn't show up, or the times in which you were abused in these places.
Even as he presides from the bench, Mitchell relates to the children of trauma who come before him.
Part of my patience for these children is, you know, that was me. Every last one of them. You know, I grew up, you know, protecting my sister from an abuser for 12 years. I grew up being abused myself sexually. And I know what it's like to be locked inside of yourself and so gone and so confused and so angry. And so I tell the kids all the time, I'm not your judge. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to show you that I'm your reflection. Whatever you see in me, you can be the exact same thing, because some of you are smarter than I was. You're a survivor. You have power that you just have not even begun to tap into. So if you think I'm special, then remember that I'm just your reflection.
If we could go back in time maybe and kind of start when these kids were younger and use that model of not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. If that would have been the mantra of when my clients now who are 12 and 13 were 4 and 5, I don't think we'd be where we are right now.
So that is a way for a video of a way to kind of explain what I mean when I say the child welfare, the juvenile delinquency to adult prison pipeline, that young men experienced so much pain and hurt at a very early age, got into the JV system. By the time I was elected, I picked up the case and started working with him and his family. His mother never showed up to court but once the entire time that we had him. And eventually he ended up in the adult system in Waukesha, and Waukesha sentenced him to, at the age of 17, sentenced him to 45 years in prison, 25 in, 20 out. So he'll be in his 40s before he gets out, and then even later, almost 60-something before he's actually done with his sentence itself. So it's very important to me when I look at that kind of case to ask, what is it that we have done and what is it that we can do moving forward to reduce the trauma of a lot of our young people who are coming into court. So there are a couple of steps that we've done in our court system to try to help reduce that trauma. One of the things that is very important to me is making sure that there's this message that we send to young people that reminds them that they're not inferior. Because I think a lot of times the young people in our system, they feel an element of inferiority because of who they are, what they've been through, and those impacts. So we try to change that narrative to give them a message that they're not inferior. So this is just a little small clip. And it reminds me all the time to when I'm with the young people or when I have a moment there in court to make sure that I give them a kind of a mini speech to say to them that you're not alone, that you're not inferior, that you are special.
Can you hear me? Good. You are not inferior. Your grades may be, your school may have been, but you can turn that around and make liars out of those bastards in exactly 1 hour when you take that test and pass it and win. So here's what I want you to do. When you find your minds wandering, I want you to knuckle back down and concentrate. Concentrate. Remember what's at stake. And show them what Eastside High is all about. A spirit that will not die.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand.
Yeah, so that's always a good video that gets me all excited too. I wanted to just remind anyone, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, or just you can always even it just jump in if you have a question and you can't use the chat to ask those questions. I'll be more than willing to answer. So the question then often I get is, what are we attempting to deter in our system? Well, one of the things that I have a list of things that I always try to do is I think theoretically, we're trying to make sure we don't add additional trauma to young people who are in our systems. So that means being very thoughtful about words. You'll hear me say a lot of times terms like children, because I'm trying to move away from language like juvenile delinquent, because that kind of language is not helpful to any of the partners who are listening. I want them to see them as children. We're trying to deter future criminal behavior. I'm trying to make sure that, especially for our young men and women, that we don't act in such a way where it makes it more attractive for them to be captured into human trafficking. We have a lot of young people who get caught up in human trafficking, that lead from the foster home to human trafficking. And we want to make sure that we are being very thoughtful about how we engage, so that lifestyle and that opportunity does not come and get them. We're trying to make sure that they're not moving into the adult criminal justice system. We want to make sure that they're meeting their educational goals, because it's important to me that they have their education cemented. And then we want to make sure that we walk away from the idea of juvenile homelessness, because after the age of 18, a lot of young people have nowhere to go. So if there are some things what are some laws that I would change in Wisconsin? It'd probably be one of the things that we worked hard to change is the presumption in Wisconsin, which means that which is to remove the shackling of children in court. Obviously we were not going to get that through the legislature, but we were able to change that presumption, which means that children now in Wisconsin are presumed to come into court without the need for handcuffs, belts, or restraints. That's a very important step for me and a very important step for us to make sure we change that presumption. There's some other things that we always talk about, which is raising the age to 18 years old versus 17, because it will give us more time to work with some of the young people. But at least the things that we can change, we've been working hard to change those things to give more opportunities for communities to work with our young people and not add additional trauma to them. One of the things I continue to always stress, again, I'll do one more video and then I'll go more toward my solutions, which is what I believe can be helpful to all of us, is using media to spread awareness. So when I say it's far easier to build strong children, it is also choosing to change the narrative of how trauma is being introduced into the lives of young people. And it's generally introduced through, caring relationships or caring partnerships through their family and family systems. So how can we work hard to make sure that we are doing the best we can to reduce that trauma? And one way I did that was to partner with our district attorney's office here in Dane County to produce a video that talks about the need to reduce corporal punishment as an outcome. And so I just want to briefly share that with you, because I think that is an important part of reducing trauma in children.
Many of parents in our country have grown up with physical discipline, and it was believed that was the right way to parent a child. And a lot of times people look back and they say, well, I experienced physical discipline and look at me, I'm okay. Is okay the measure that we want to measure our success by? Violence has been a part of our history. That doesn't mean we have to make it part of our culture.
When you think about corporal punishment, it is rooted in this notion of violence as the cure for everything that ails us.
In a sense, using physical discipline really sort of says might makes right. It's not because it's reasonable, it's not because it's logical, it's because I said so.
Parenting is not about control. It's about making sure that they understand the values of what is inside of them. It's all about being very intentional. And when you are intentional, you give yourself and your child more of a beautiful relationship, not less. What we're trying to introduce is a different model that's rooted in, not in fear, but giving you permission to actually love, maybe in ways that you haven't been loved.
We need to ensure our kids are treating each other and others around them with dignity and respect. And that's really where the core is when you take physical discipline off the plate. We now know that parenting with love, dignity, respect is what really allows children to flourish. The research shows there is no positive effect from physical discipline, none. The best you can hope for is to have no effect at all.
I think the key is the young child that we make a difference in who's experienced trauma. And that could be crisis, it could be treatment, it could be one event, it could be multiple trauma events. But what we know today about brain development, it can freeze a person socially and emotionally in that particular stage, is critical to be able to, in a timely way, be able to make a difference in providing stability, because that will prevent the future problems from occurring later.
Now, the hard thing when you're talking to parents about physical discipline, and if they've used it, to say, take that out of your tool bag. What do you replace it with? Especially if they're talking about teenagers. Where do they go?
If you want your child to be caring and kind and generous, then guess what? They have to see it through you. And parenting really should be not just do what I say, it should be rooted in be who I am. And if you want that little body to be loving and kind and generous and smiling and achieving high, where are they gonna get that from? They have to get it from you. Parenting is about consistency and love. It takes more creativity at times than just, going to grab a belt. That's easy, but, learning how to punish or give responsibility or to give accountability, whether it's coming from you or it's coming from other people, that creativity is what you need. It's really about being able to be there to help process what young people are going through.
It's not going to be easier parenting. It's really not. But it's going to have a real impact on your child's success, on your child's relationships, and on the community as a whole, because we hopefully will have less violence. We'll have less situations where people are thinking, you know what, it's okay to pick up a gun and fire a gun. It's okay for me to take what I want from you because I'm bigger and stronger than you.
It is only in human nature that we have been taught to do something that is against our nature. Just because it was done to you doesn't mean you have to do it to somebody else. We have to be the ones who decide what we want for our children moving forward. And just because something has been okay doesn't always make it right.
It is never too late. I think Maya Angelou sort of says it best. And, she said, you do the best you can until you know better. And then you do better. If we don't want violence in our community, we have to take violence out of our homes. And it starts with our kids.
My children won't even know what it is because it has never happened to them. So then when they share discipline and boundaries with their children, it won't be rooted in them thinking that they can go to the easy way of grabbing something and hurting their children. No, we were rooted in love. We were rooted in boundaries. And I think if we did that 1,000,000 times, we will reproduce a generation that's rooted in values and love, and maybe they won't hurt each other, and maybe they won't kill each other because we have given another generation the freedom to know what love is. So in time, due to time limitations, let me just go and start talking a little bit more about some specific solutions. One of the things that we have really focused on is building culturally based mental health services and putting them under contract so that we could help with families. That has really been very beneficial for a lot of the families, especially the Black and brown families who come into court, so that they can have a trusting therapist that they work with. We built a family first model that allows the county to intervene with preventative services before a formal petition is filed in the court system. That has always been helpful, working ahead, getting ahead of the concerns that we have. We do different experiences in the community, partner with groups like Above the Clouds to kind of bring in young people so they could be able to fly planes. I'm like, if you're still in cars, you need to learn how to fly a plane. So to elevate your experiences so that you can see different things in the world and see the different possibilities that your life can give you. One of the things that I talked to your team about is recruiting more CASA volunteers, and CASA is called a Court-Appointed Special Advocates. I think every community could start a CASA program, or at least find support for your CASA program, because it really gives the only way for community members to come into our court systems and to be able to participate in a very meaningful way. You know, it's just almost like a big brothers, big sister program, but it's more court related. So you give, you know, stuff to the court system, to the judge, and every community really needs a CASA program to coincide, especially the more rural you are, the more you really need a CASA program, because you don't have access to all of the services that like maybe a place like Milwaukee or Dane or even La Crosse may have. But you want to be able to make sure that the faith community is bonding together to be able to come together to provide a different service that may not be available in the community. You know, trying to nurture housing and employment partnerships. So how do we work with a lot of the faith communities, the schools, you know, our United Way, Boys and Girls Club, to make sure that we have employment opportunities and partnerships. We try to include what I call whole system partners in the juvenile justice system so that we can educate the entire community about the things that we have. I started doing ride-alongs with community leaders so they could participate. In the video that you saw where I was on the bench, the guy who was sitting next to me is the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club and does a wonderful job. But I wanted him to come in and see, you know, what I see on a daily basis and the impact that the trauma and the lack of education, lack of resources is having on their young lives. We utilize Zoom a lot more than we used to before the pandemic. So we utilize it to make sure families don't have to come off work all day just to come and have 15-minute hearings, but can log in from work or wherever they are, take it from their car. It just gives them more of a flexibility to do that. And then we do family-specific tailored dispositions that allow for me to access safety concerns when they're returning children home to their families, so we can make sure it's very specific to their needs and not very broad. We meet with young people, bring them into a court system, bring them to a courthouse as a way to really encourage them to see that the justice system can be a partner and need not be adversarial in the process. We do a lot of stuff like making sure that parents who have, you know, inclusion of incarcerated parent in the conversation about their children. We involve parents in conversation and listening for concerns related to how a case is moving. What do they need to see? So we want to make sure that they have those kind of supports. And then lastly, it's also a reminder that even if you can't do the wholesale changing of the system, that the system is made up of people. And what we're trying to do is to eliminate the micro cuts that kids and people feel in their communities. How do we make sure that that's not something that they have to experience? And this little video by Toni Morrison really made my mind like, it's just like, boom, man, this is amazing. This is exactly what we should do. And it's just a simple question. Does your face light up when the kid walks in the room? And that was this is an amazing little short video to really capture that idea.
If you were to ask me in the early 90s, what is the big lesson you've learned from this show? I would have said that the common denominator in the human experience is that everybody just wants to be appreciated or validated. That got clarified in such a way that the hairs on my head rose when I heard Toni Morrison, who was on the show for The Bluest Eye, one of my favorite books of all time. I'd chosen her for book club selection yet again. And she said these words.
It's interesting to see when a kid walks in the room, your child or anybody else's child, does your face light up? And that's what they're looking for. When my children used to walk in the room when they were little, I looked at them to see if they had buckled their trousers, or if their hair was combed, or if their socks were up. And so you think your affection and your deep love is on display. because you're caring for them. It's not. When they see you, they see the critical face. What's wrong now? But then if you let your, as I tried from then on, to let your face speak what's in your heart, because when they walked in the room, I was glad to see them. It's just as small as that, you see.
That is
Just something that small just does your face light up, man. And when the kids come in, I try to make sure, you know, even as a judge, even to the parents and other cases, you know, I try to make sure my face lights up because I want them to see that this is a part of it. Like I said in the video, you know, I'm not only that judge, I'm a reflection, been through all kinds of trauma in my life, but the goal is to make sure that I give this energy to our young people. So whether I'm being silly with young people in court or holding babies that are about to be adopted or bringing young people into the court system to talk about it, or even going out into the community. I have a thing where I like to go out into the community, take my robe and ask the question, who wants to be a basketball player or who wants to be football or who wants to be a judge? Because I want them to think about being a judge, and I put my robe on them. You know, speaking to groups of young men in the community. This young woman was a special case. She just, you know, she was really, you know, had really given up on education. And I brought her and her class up to the school so they could be able to experience the court system. And then, when I was running for the Supreme Court, came across this young man, Ricardo. His grandmother knew I was coming into town and brought her to the historic Coffee Makes You Black in Milwaukee. And it was just an opportunity to see a young man whose father is incarcerated, mama's has a substance use disorders, on drugs, and, you know, the whole narrative. And so when I put my little robe on him was a way to encourage him and his grandmother to say, stay positive. And it's just amazing to see that you can do small things to be able to transform the narrative so that we can work together as a community. So, you know, as we think about the role that faith plays in all of these things, it may seem overwhelming. But the small things that can be done, whether it's from CASA volunteers, starting a CASA program, you know, mobilizing your groups to be able to ask the question, what can you fundamentally do to support the court systems in your community and the families, whether it's through gift cards or, you know, Christmases or, you know, make Thanksgiving opportunities to support families. There's a lot of small things that can be done that attaches ourselves inside of the CASA program. Is a court-appointed special advocate program that I talked about earlier. If you Google CASA, it is a wonderful opportunity to have people get inside the court system, to be able to work with the courtroom partners, to be present in ways that you cannot be present right now. So those are some of the suggestions I would give, and I'll stop there. And if there are any questions, I will try to answer them.
Judge, there's a question in the chat. What is CASA? Can you explain it more clearly?
All right. I thought I just did it, but I'll do it again. So CASA is a court-appointed special advocate. And so it is that program in which, you know, you'll get a chance to come inside the court system and become volunteers. It's almost like a Big Brothers Big Sister program for court-appointed volunteers. So the court appoints you, it's confidential, but you get a chance to work with families and children as a part of the court process. And that's something I think, regardless of you in a rural or urban environment, that's something that everybody can do and still be able to lean in and be supportive and possibly even start one in your own community that allows for you to be able to participate. And then again, also, you know, encourage ride-alongs. You know, I know that the court system can seem very daunting and so big, much like a hospital, because you never know where to start. But, you know, build those good relationships with your judges so you can do ride-alongs and begin to see what it looks like. And that will help inform the kind of advocacy and ways in which you shape your community so they could be able to participate in transforming this narrative.
I'm glad you mentioned not using labels like addict or there's a word for that people are trying to get away from for someone who's incarcerated. So I think in medicine as well, you know, we're not labeling people as diabetics. It's a person who has diabetes. And in my work with substance use disorder in pregnant women, especially, we don't want to talk about addict. It's a person who has an illness, and it's a brain disease, and it's not a lifelong disease if it can be treated. So that, I think that was really an important point. One of the things that I have run into with my work with Black Mamas Matter and many other organizations of color is that we are white women mostly. And someone said to me once that their worst enemy are suburban white women. So we absolutely need to acknowledge white privilege. So how can we best make that connection and do the work that you're talking about without coming in and telling people how to do it?
Well, I think that's an interesting perspective, because I do think that there are a lot of good intentions that fall short because they're not conscious of the kind of racial historical legacy that comes along with that privilege. And so, I always tell people, if you ever want to have a good critique, go read Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter to the Birmingham jail, where he talks about the white moderate, and just kind of listen to how Dr. King is talking about, that people don't want conflict. And in Wisconsin, that is very risk averse, right? It's that, Midwest nice, passive aggressive. Nobody wants to, call what it is in the room. So you have to be very thoughtful about that as well. But, sometimes just being able to be honest about it, saying what you don't know, you may not be the best at this, you may not have all of the phrases down, but treat it just like you would in the other community. I can imagine the LGBTQ community have been hit with a lot of different, ways in which people still use terminology that doesn't reflect our evolution and understanding of sexuality and gender identity. Just admit you don't know. And then that community at least can know that you're open to the idea. We can have a conversation about that. But, whether you're suburban or rural, for the most part, I would say the opioid epidemic has opened up a lot of people to this new conversation about, what is criminal and what is the image, right? The image has really been transforming. And I think that's what we have to pay attention to. Laura put something in the chat, and I know I'll be wrapping it up. Somebody had to hit me with what I considered running for Supreme Court again. Well, here we go. So I will say that, Laura, one of the things that I have always done, I grew up, I faced a lot of trauma. I spent 12 years in a sexual abusive situation with my mother and family. And I talk about this openly because it left me with the inability to read. And so I grew up as an 18-year-old, not able to read. But I will say that my faith community, my commitment to God, my calling at the age of 15 years old gave me something to inspire to. So while I couldn't read, I could listen. I was a great listener. And at the age of 18 years old, I had some wonderful teachers, Ms. Daisy Wilson and Margaret Bell, who taught me how to read at 18. And all of the stuff that Dr. Kathy read off from, Princeton and Morehouse, none of that's possible if I didn't go to that small junior college and had those two Black women teach me how to read and write. So I think those kind of ideas of transformation that's possible, like I'm looking at myself as a judge, and yet I came from some of the similar places that a lot of these young people come from. I can say to them that there is a path that doesn't, it's not going to feel, you're not going to always feel, straight and narrow. It's going to feel like it's all over the place. You're going to experience homelessness. You're going to have your ups, your downs, make mistakes, not make mistakes. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to figure out ways that you can retain your level of humanity and not give up on yourself, not lose hope. Because hope is I think is the secret ingredient for transformation. I think that's what Jesus came. And when he came into the temples, or when he came to people who were blind, he would ask them questions like, do you want to see again? They had lost hope. Do you want to walk again? They lost hope. Do you want to live? All of those kind of things are things that we want to make sure that we focus on. So I think closing prisons in Wisconsin, I will say that that is a tall order, because we'd have to literally get 110% behind making sure that all of the systems work together. And I can tell you, mental health, medical, education, we have to do the court systems all have to do a better job at serving families and people in general, so that we don't have to build prisons. Prison is an outcome. It is an outcome of so many different small things that did not happen in most people's lives. You may have some people, some outliers who just sociopaths who just, go out and are just violent. But for the most part, it is an incremental thing that we have seen over the years. And some of the things that we think about criminality hasn't changed in decades. And so I think the more we can, update our understanding of trauma and what trauma looks like, then we can be able to apply that knowledge into the lives of everybody else.
When you speak of trauma, I'm on a Facebook group called Prison Friends and Families. I have a family member that's in prison now, and they talk about their loved one being put in solitary, which they call the hole. One of our church members, Dr. Steve Dykstra, is a Milwaukee County crisis psychologist. He talks about the harm to our youth, our juveniles at Lincoln Hills who are put in solitary confinement. From my understanding, solitary is some of the most awful trauma that people can suffer. So there is and we'll talk about it at the end, Wisdom is having a invite at the Capitol on the 23rd, on Tuesday, to end solitary confinement. What else can we do to stop this, especially to our juveniles?
Well, I would say for updated information, Lincoln Hills is under consent decree, so it can't use solitary confinement anymore since it's been up under the federal investigation. So they're all in a housed unit. They're not, put into the restrictive housing or solitary confinement or the hole like they do. They still do it in, in local jails and prisons, and it is a practice to the degree in which, yes, it is. We know it doesn't reap any kind of mental health benefits whatsoever. But again, in the absence of what I consider to say trauma or mental health resources that are really dedicated to addressing, a lot of the mental health that we see, we're going to continue to have institutions that are being built to house those individuals that our community has not collectively been able to address or support in that time. So I know I'm at my time, so I can recapture some of this beautiful Saturday, but I want to thank you all so much. And I'll make sure I send the PowerPoint to you, Doc, and you can be able to share it more widely with everyone else. All right.
Thank you so much. And I think all have been touched.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate your love, your passion. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So it is now 10:06, and we will have a break. Why don't we come back at 10:30? Since we are a little ahead of schedule, but this gives you time to socialize in your watch parties. And I believe that Lisa may have an opportunity for putting us into rooms if we want to have chats. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, Lisa, but maybe you can advise us.
Yes. So I will open a breakout room. And if you'd like to join, there will be a window that pops up on your screen that says join breakout room. And that will allow you to connect with other people here in the room. If I see that there are, all of you joining the breakout room, I might create a couple so that you can have smaller conversations in smaller groups. If you don't want to join, you don't have to do anything. You can just watch the rolling announcements or grab something to eat or use the restroom, whatever you choose to do. So.
And so we keep these adjuncts at the law school and the pastor.
Welcome back. I hope you had some fun sharing thoughts and plans for what you can do with your teams. That was the bell that my mom gave me, and I did that in honor of her. She was very involved with United Methodist Women for my whole growing up, and as long as I can remember, well into her 80s. I know that she would have loved to hear this presentation just as much as you all did. I just wanted, before our next speaker, talk a little bit about personhood. I think this is a really important concept, especially with our upcoming election, but also with what I've seen for many years in my work. Because, as Judge Mitchell mentioned, the children's courts are sealed. And so we have a law that was enacted almost 20 years ago, the Act 292. It's the Cocaine Mom Law is the name for it, or the nickname for it. But what this law does is allow anyone to report a pregnant woman who is using a substance, even alcohol, and it's very vaguely written. So the law then allows someone to report them to Child Protective Services. Well, you've heard how we've got some difficulties with Child Protective Services. This will allow them to screen in or screen out the pregnant woman. They may not even be using at the time, but have a history of using, and we've seen this. And that then allows Child Protective Services to either force them into treatment, perhaps in a treatment program inpatient far from their homes for up to 90 days. And if they refuse, they can be put in jail. And I've experienced a number of cases where I've testified for women who were actually put in jail. One woman was put into solitary confinement for 2 days when she was in jail, and they don't get treatment. When they go to jail, up until recently, they weren't even getting treatment for their substance use. But the whole idea is that the fetus has more rights than the mother. And when they go to jail, to the court, the fetus gets a guardian ad litem and the mother does not get representation. And we've seen this over and over and over again. And as you heard, when you put women in shackles and you treat them this way, and they have a medical illness that needs treatment and they're not getting treated, we're just causing more and more trauma. So with a law like that, in Wisconsin, when the fetus has more rights than a woman, that's where we're facing the kind of problems that we're seeing now in Alabama, where embryos have more rights than women, where in Arizona now, there's the only exception is for the life of the mother. That is really a very, very small group. And there's so much more with what we see with maternal mortality and the risk of being pregnant at all that makes you higher chance of dying. We need to really look at our law. And I testified in federal court for the one woman, Tamara Lesher. The court found that our law was unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the Attorney General then, Brad Schimmel, appealed it to the Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago. And they determined that since she had delivered and was no longer pregnant, and delivered, by the way, a healthy baby with a midwife in, I believe, Barron, Wisconsin, everything was fine. But they determined that this was moot. They dropped the case. It never got repealed. And the only people that can repeal it at this point are the legislature, unless we get another case. So personhood is a very important concept that is affecting many women. And Peggy's going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing right now. So our next speaker is Peggy West Schroeder. She is the executive director of FREE. And I've heard her recently at an all-day conference at the Zoo Center with many wonderful speakers. FREE is doing fantastic work. I'm so glad that this was founded because for years we've been trying to get our voices heard to stop the terrible treatment of incarcerated women and especially pregnant women. Peggy herself was directly impacted and has been born to a mother while her mother was incarcerated at Tachita Correctional Facility. She was raised in foster care and later adopted into a loving family. Peggy graduated from Milwaukee Area Technical College and has worked for the past 30 years in human services, in addition to 14 years as an elected member of the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors from 2002 to 2018, which is phenomenal. And at that time, she made history as the first Hispanic person ever elected to the board. Congratulations for that. Today, Peggy is working to assure that incarcerated women across the state of Wisconsin are treated with dignity, that they feel supported, and are provided trauma-informed care. Her goal is to change the process by which babies are born within the Department of Corrections, righting the wrongs faced by her mother and many other women. Peggy and her husband, Tommy, live in Milwaukee and are the proud parents of 6 children and 6 grandchildren. Maybe that's even more by now, I don't know. So please welcome Peggy. I am so happy to have you here and take time to educate us.
All right. Good morning. I'm really happy to be here this morning too, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And so happy to see so many wonderful women here on a Saturday morning. I am going to share my screen. Before I do that, I want to just be fully transparent in that I talk about this all day, every day, right? This is what I live, breathe, and do. And so if there's terms that I'm using that you are not familiar with, by all means, come off the mic and be like, wait, and I will stop. If you have questions while you're going along, I'm actually presenting through Canva. So Lisa and Kathy are going to monitor the chat and make sure that I'm getting the questions in the chat because I can't see them. But I'm more than fine with people hopping off. I grew up again in a home where there was 8 children and I'm used to being interrupted and I don't have issue with that. So, but I want to make sure. So for your personal information, we do a lot on people-centered language, right? So you're going to hear me say people living with a criminal conviction, which is what we say instead of saying a felon, for instance. The other thing is that I will use the term incarcerated people or incarcerated women versus saying inmates, or sometimes I'll even say people in their care because that's a term that we fought for and they're currently at least trying to use, I think, on some magnitude. Now, so we also use the term directly justice impacted people. So what that means is I am a directly justice impacted person because despite everything that I've been through with my mother, which makes me indirectly impacted, I also am a person living with a criminal conviction. So I have both sides of that. So indirectly impacted I am because both my mother and my husband are both directly impacted by the criminal legal system. I am also directly impacted through my dealings with the criminal legal system. So those are some terms that we'll talk about right off the bat. So instead of now in the future saying, some things, saying felons or saying, convicts or other things, you can now the lingo. You can say directly justice impacted people, or you can just simply say someone living with a criminal conviction. Alrighty, so I'm going to share my screen. I do have some slides. I have a time frame. I like to talk. You can speed me up. So, and again, I live, breathe, and work this. So we are free, aka free movement. Why are we free movement? Because when we went to go get our 501c3, that was the name that was available. So that's who we are legally. Illegally, I guess, we are free, and we have been since 2016. So free, as I sit here today, is our own standalone nonprofit C3. We are working on becoming a C4. Right now we are fundraising to be able to become a C4. And for those of you who don't know the difference, C3 is a nonprofit, C4 is a political action committee. We don't necessarily want to endorse candidates. However, we do want to be able to register people to vote. We want to be able to push issues as people go to vote. We want you thinking about the issues, which is part of why we do these presentations. And so as a C4, we can do that maybe a little less stressfully. So we were formed in 2016. We were born out of Expo, which I think everybody's familiar with in the state of Wisconsin, ex-incarcerated people organizing. We still love Expo. They still love us. However, we knew sitting at those tables that our issues as women were very much different, albeit sometimes very much the same as men. At the Expo table, we didn't feel like we were getting the voice that we needed to amplify the issues of incarcerated women and girls in the state of Wisconsin. And so we had the conversation and said, we're going to go off and become our own thing. And so with Expo and Wisdom's blessing, and actually their Wisdom and Expo both at some point in time were our fiscal sponsors, because we didn't have our 501c3. We were able to apply for grants, and they helped us to be able to establish ourselves as a 501c3. To this day, we are still an affiliate of Wisdom, just like Jonah is in Green Bay, Moses is in Madison, Micah is in Milwaukee. What sets us apart is us and the Minneconnicans. We're both two affiliates that are not necessarily faith-based. So that's it. Everything else we share all the same benefits of being a Wisdom member. And I want to say this, I heard you guys talking about white privilege and being white women and what can you do as white women. We need white women, right? White women can get me into spaces that I by myself cannot get into. So there's definitely spaces for you in this work. And when you have titles in front of your name like doctor, right, or attorney or whatever, you know, that makes you even more valuable. And so we appreciate everyone who joins us and does this work as an ally. All righty. This is my beautiful staff. And I say beautiful, like, wow, they could all be cover girls. So we do have one man on staff. He's our statewide organizer, and he actually is doing circles of support work. And so we'll talk about circles of support as we move on. But we do have an organizer in Milwaukee. We have an organizer in Madison, and we have an organizer in Chippewa Valley, up in Eau Claire. So I see Eau Claire's in the house, the LSUMC. You need to get a hold of Jenny and get you guys connected. And then we also have Molly, who's not technically on our staff, but we always claim her. She is our research and evaluations person. She's actually a master's student through UW, and she's been with Free since our inception. And then we have Nikki Shabo, who is directly impacted and is our maternal infant health fellow. She's actually a woman who was told while she was incarcerated that she would not be able to have children. She came into the system pregnant. She had lost that pregnancy, and during that was told you won't be able to conceive and have children. And she actually got out. She was out for, I believe, almost 2 years. She met a wonderful man who's also directly impacted and doing wonderful things. They're a power couple, if you will. And they were blessed to get pregnant. And they now have a 2-year-old who is adorable, whose name is Josiah. And I might be his #1 fan. Maybe his grandma is, but he's wonderful. And this is the reason why we do this work, right? We want to make sure that anyone of childbearing age who's in the carceral system, when they get out, they have the ability to still be able to have children if that is what they choose to do. Ivory is our resource specialist, meaning she helps us to raise funds. And Julie is our operations director. She literally does everything else. And we currently have a health navigator position available, which I will talk about in a little bit. We're proud to be 98% justice impacted. Ivory is directly impacted, and Molly is not fortunate. Fortunately, Molly is not impacted at all. So if it was not for those two, we would be 100% justice impacted. But again, we believe that indirectly impacted people have a very important voice in this work as well. So moving on. These are our leaders. So we literally just started doing actual direct service work. And I'll explain that in a minute. But the bulk of our work that we do is in organizing. What we want to do is we want to empower these ladies who have been affected by this system to identify and then go about making the change that they wish to see. And so, as I'll point out in another slide coming up, all of the campaigns that we currently have and that we're continue to work on are all things that were identified by our leaders as things that are important to them and things that they want to work on, which is a beautiful thing and really helps us get the work done. So these are our beautiful leaders. And we have leaders from all over the state. So I wanted to really quickly touch on the need. So free is unique and so necessary. And again, this is a snapshot of the US, and this is the most current snapshot of incarceration in the US. So you see that, and this gets overlooked, and I have a separate slide on it. And I'm going to try to talk a little bit more about this unique to Wisconsin in regards to local jails. So as you can see, local jails, most women are incarcerated in local jails. And then you have state jails, state prisons, which in the pie for the US is 77,000 people. And then you've got 3,600 youth. You've got immigrant detention, which is 9,000. And so that you're aware, free, we don't care how you were incarcerated, right? We literally don't care. If you were in the juvenile system, you belong to free. If you were in an ICE detention center, you belong to free. If you were in jail, you belong to free. If you were in prison, you belong to free. Federal prison, you know what? You belong to free. So federal prisons and jails are that contribute to 16,000 women in that system. Now, it's like I can't talk about this without telling you that there has been an increase since 1970. There has been nearly a 14-fold increase in women's incarceration in the United States. So from 1982 to 2019, the incarceration rate in federal prisons in the US was 9.6 for every 100,000 women. So that means that out of every 10,000 women, 9.6 of them will be, almost 10, will be affected somehow by the carceral system. That was in 2019. So that is an increase from a rate of 1.1 in 1982. So the numbers of women incarcerated just continues to grow at an alarming rate. Most of the time when you hear about women's incarceration, it's at an alarming rate. In Wisconsin this week, there are 1,521 women who are incarcerated in the state of Wisconsin in 3 different facilities. When you look at that data, sometimes they also include the Dodge Infirmary, this week there are no women in the Dodge Infirmary. So 3 facilities, which is Taycheedah, Robert W. Ellsworth, which is in Sturtevant, and the Milwaukee Women's Center, which is in Milwaukee and is like a transitional place where women go, hopefully when they're reentering into society. I want to just throw this out there because this is maybe an opinion that I share by myself, but the federal system, when you are transitioning back into the community from the federal system, everybody goes to a halfway house. And then your stay there depends on your progress. I tend to think that this is a good model. Because as we'll talk about it, you know, in a few minutes, we do not do reentry well in the state of Wisconsin prison system. And what I mean by that is we actually have a housing campaign, and the back of the shirt on our housing campaign says, let this sink in, 47.5% of women released from the Wisconsin prison system are housing unstable. And housing unstable is a really nice way of saying they're homeless. They don't have a home that they can call their own. They don't have an address they can give you. They may be couch surfing. They may be staying in a shelter. They may be staying somewhere, but it's not their own house. So imagine if we had a system where we were actually being supportive and putting people in supportive housing. And again, I'm not gonna say that federal halfway houses, all of them are supportive transitional housing, because they're not. What I will say is we have a lot of interaction with Parsons House here in Milwaukee, and they do, in my opinion, the best job they can with what they have in order to be supportive and to make sure that people are landing on their feet. So the next slide I have here is drivers of women's incarceration. And the question underneath is, do we need to incarcerate for the things that we're seeing women be incarcerated for? So again, this is a national picture. So drugs is one of the biggest drivers. 18,900 women currently are in some type of carceral situation in the United States due to drugs. And that could be a mirage of things, right? That could be a crime that you committed to get drugs. That could be possession of drugs. That could be possession with intent to deliver. It could be a whole lot of things. So drugs, when we take a look at drugs, I think there's a lot of programs out there, and there's a lot of things that are available to people who have substance use disorder, where any of us could probably make the argument that depending on the crime, someone would not need to be incarcerated for a drug conviction, right? And then you have the layer that Kathy just added with personhood, because the personhood doesn't just happen with women who are currently pregnant. It could be someone who was incarcerated 20 years ago that when they go to the doctor and find out that they're pregnant, their county then decides that they need to get involved and they need to have CPS involved, and they need to, you know, make sure that this fetus is in protective custody. And we're actually calling that the pregnancy to prison pipeline, because unfortunately it's happening more and more across the United States with the dissent of Roe versus Wade. We see women who are going across the state line to get reproductive services being penalized when they come back to their home state. We're seeing people being, believe it or not, being jailed for having a miscarriage. Any number of ridiculous things going on these days. Public order. So public order is an interesting one. Public order could do with possession of a weapon. DUI is considered public order. There's also obviously disorderly conduct. 7,900 women currently are incarcerated in the US under public order. And then there's property. So property is 14,300 women currently incarcerated for property. And that's burglary, fraud, car theft. And then it says other property, which I can't name any off the top of my head. But here's where I think you're going to be a little bit shocked. Maybe, maybe not. I know Kathy won't be. So we talk about violent crimes, right? We've got 34,900 women who are incarcerated throughout the US on a violent crime. Bunny ears, bunny ears. And I'm using those bunny ears because when you think of violent crime, what do you think? You come off mute and yell. Violent crime, violent. If someone has been bodily there's been bodily injury, right? We're talking about assault. We're talking about rape, manslaughter, murder, right? What about robbery? What about burglary, arson? Those are all things that are also included in violent crimes, which generally, especially when women are involved, it's not been a violent act towards a person, right? We've all, like, there's even a song about it. I think Carrie Underwood has a song about taking her Louisville Slugger to both headlights, right? That is considered to be a violent crime. Now, the truck, I'm sure, thinks that it's a violent crime, but as, human beings, do we consider that to be violent? I don't consider that to be violent, right? It's definitely property damage. Definitely the person should be made to pay. However, if there was a human being standing next to the truck when the Louisville Slugger hit both headlights, you had an option there, right? You could have hit him with the Louisville Slugger, who I'm sure that's really who you wanted to hit, but you didn't. And so, again, it's just some of these common sense things. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to research what is a violent crime in the state of Wisconsin, and then take a look at, is that something maybe you guys want to take on? Do you want to do some work on really reclassifying what a violent crime is to make sure that people are actually being charged with violent crime? So I want to throw this out there too. One of the things I did say is rape and sexual assault obviously are violent. But last year, the state legislature took it upon themselves to include confinement in as a sexual act. So some forms of kidnapping, keeping someone against their will, those are all now sexual acts, whether they have to do with sex or not. And again, the pretense is great, because the pretense is that we're helping victims of human trafficking by enacting this legislation. However, unfortunately, they didn't put that caveat in there. And so it doesn't just cover human trafficking, it covers everybody. The other thing that I want you just to be aware of in regards to that argument is that currently in the state of Wisconsin, we have a lifetime GPS for people who are on the offender registry. So registrants can have to have more than 2 cases in order to be assigned to be on GPS. And then those cases have to be concurrent in order for them to be on lifetime GPS. So you now have men and women, mostly men, who are coming out of the system who have these confinement cases, these kidnapping cases. And again, it could have been, they didn't let their girlfriend out of the room because they didn't want her to break up with them. And they felt like they needed like 30 more minutes just to talk to her about it. And the police got involved, and now he's charged. They are now having to wear GPS for the rest of their life because they have that case on their record. So I just wanted to throw that out. Everything snowballs here in the fine state of Wisconsin. All right, moving on.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I worked in a women's detention center as a volunteer for a number of years, teaching women about life skills. And most of the women in the detention center that I interacted with got there primarily because they were in a relationship with a man that they had to do the getaway card, or they had to do the drug deal, or because of basically because they were in a controlling relationship with a man. Where would those crimes fit? Because it seemed like it was really common.
So that's called being a party to a crime. So the first person would have been charged with, let's say, grand theft auto. Grand theft auto. And then if she was the person who was driving the car, then she would be charged with party to a crime. In the state of Wisconsin, it's up to the judge, but normally people get charged exactly the same way as the person who committed the crime. Now, there are other states where if you are involved in any means in, say, a homicide, you then get charged with murder. So if you were driving the car, you are just as guilty as the person who shot, stabbed, suffocated, whatever, the person who passed away. Fortunately, right now, Wisconsin does not have laws like that. But you're right. When it comes to women's incarceration, a lot of times it's being a party to a crime of some other thing that they were not directly involved in. So the other thing is domestic violence. There's a lot of women currently who are charged with domestic violence. And this is another thing that maybe you ladies would like to take up. So the federal government, the federal Congress just passed a Domestic Violence Protection Act. The thing is, and that could actually release women from prison straight away if you fall under the guidelines of that act. However, many prosecutors are just too lazy to take a look and to read it and then to go through and do the work and say these people are eligible. And so there's a process by which you can apply. I just met a lady last week, Friday. I was in New York for the Beyond Bars conference. And I just met a lady who was eligible under that provision to be released from prison. It took her 2 years. 2 years. And that was because she had somebody working on it for her, on a part-time basis. But someone was at least paying attention and was on their radar. But she said there's just tons of women out there that's not on anybody's radar, and they're going to languish because it's not being used the way that it was designed to do, which is to release women in domestic violence situations from prison. So thank you so much for that question. That's an excellent question. So I just wanted to showcase for you county jails, because I think when we talk about women's incarceration, a lot of us immediately are thinking about prisons, whereas your local jail probably presents a better opportunity for you to really make a lasting impact for these women. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And I said it's an opportunity to thwart the system, meaning that there's an opportunity here to hopefully make sure that these women don't end up in the Wisconsin prison system. So the first one is court watching. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with court watching, and I'm actually not the best person to present that, but I definitely know who is. And if it's something that you guys are interested in learning more about, I can definitely help you put that together. But essentially, the premise of court watching is having someone be there to figure out with this, with the person who's being accused, is this actually something that this person did? Does this person actually have the legal representation that they need? And what could be done to remedy this that wouldn't include incarceration? Which leads us to the next thing, which is bail. So Wisconsin has cash bail. Many women are sitting in jail because they cannot afford the cash bail. When I say they cannot afford the cash bail, I'm talking about $300, $200, $100 in cash bail. They either don't have someone who will put that bail up for them, or the people that they know, they just don't have it. And so many, again, women like yourselves are getting involved in forming a bail fund. Or because Mother's Day is coming out, you see across the state, many women get together, we pool our money, and we do a Mother's Day bailout, which is intentional. You go in, you take a look at women that are in your county jail, who's going to be who's going to be the best bang for your buck, if you will. And I know it sounds terrible to say it that way, but who's going to show up for court again? Who has kids at home? Who has a reason to be on the outside and a reason to want to stay on the outside, which would make you want to invest your money in bailing this person out and making sure that she's coming out. And normally the women that get picked are women who have jobs, women who just got in, women who have a case that's, you know, something that's not going to languish in the judicial system for years and years, but something that can be tied up pretty quickly. But again, so bail. The other thing is,
Peggy?
Yep.
How do you access that information? How do you get, you know, information from the jail to find that out and make the assessment?
You would contact the jail administrator and let them know that you're interested in doing a Mother's Day bailout and that you need their assistance in identifying women who are eligible for bail and who you believe or who they believe would be good candidates for a bailout.
Thank you.
The other way you could do that is you could also use social media and say, you know, Women United in Faith want to do Mother's Day bailout for Dane County. Please contact us if you have a loved one who is a woman who is currently incarcerated in Dane County, and then you could gain information that way. So there's that. The other thing with county jails is and I heard somebody say earlier that they had volunteered at in a county jail. You're much more likely to be able to volunteer or to introduce programming in your county jail than you are in the state prison system. The other thing that you could do with your county jail is you could contact them and say, hey, I'm interested in helping to collect clothing for women who get released from county jail. One thing is that two things happen to women when we are incarcerated. We either gain weight or we lose weight. Our clothes never fit properly, or we got picked up for a DUI and we've been sitting for 3 months, and what we have to be released in is club clothes, right? Our short skirt and our tank top, and we're going to be released at 12 noon from the courthouse, and everybody's going to know that you know, that I just got out of jail because I'm going to be already carrying my things in a clear plastic bag, which is another thing that's a super nice thing to do, right? Get some Women United in Faith totes and take them and drop them off at the county jail and say, we would like for women to be able to use these to put their things in when they leave your facility, so that you're not walking out of the county jail with a clear plastic bag. Those are just a few of the things. Hygiene, you know, hygiene products. Again, if you want to do a hygiene drive and put them together and call the county jail and say, hey, I've got these products here, I want to drop them off for when women get out so that they have, you know, something to use for the time while they're trying to get their lives together. Women appreciate all of that. Next. So this is what our mission and our vision is, and I know I'm running out of time here, but we want to assure that in any space where incarceration is being discussed, that women's incarceration is being discussed. If you leave out of here with only one thing, right, and you decide, hey, I want to do something on incarceration, what we're asking is, if you're doing a panel on some form of incarceration, just make sure you have a woman who was formerly incarcerated on that panel. That's it. We want for people to think of women being incarcerated as much as they think of men being incarcerated. And normally when we talk about women being incarcerated, people are like, I didn't even think about that. Pregnant women being incarcerated, never thought about that. Pregnant girls being incarcerated, never thought about that, right? And like I said in the beginning, women have a very unique perspective as being people who are incarcerated over men. Not one's better than the other. However, we do things with our bodies men cannot do. And those things are paramount for not only ourselves and for that little person that we will bring into this world, but for future generations of people. Because one thing we know is that incarceration is generational. How do we break that cycle? And we believe that one of the ways that we do that is bringing dignity into childbirth. I am a 54-year-old woman who does not know what I look like as a newborn. I have no pictures of myself with my mother as a newborn. Those beautiful pictures you see of everybody holding their baby in a hospital bed, you will never see one of those with me. I did not go to foster care till I was 6 weeks old. I don't know why. Was I born premature? Was I born addicted to something? What, did I have fetal alcohol syndrome? I don't know. All I know is that there are no pictures of me existing before I was 6 weeks old. Right? And even though I was placed in a very loving foster home, I was told repeatedly that I was someone's dream come true, which is a beautiful thing to be, right? I was later adopted into that same home. That's not everybody's story. And as beautiful as that is, I am now a mother who has children and grandchildren who don't know our history. They know someone's history, but it's not ours. And I really want for them to know our history. I actually just found my biological father like 2 years ago. He had already passed away. And so thankfully, I have a biological sister that I talk to. But, you know, she doesn't even know all of the things, all of the questions that I have, right? Because she's a different person than me and not necessarily interested in all the same stuff that I'm interested in. So there's always something that you guys can be working on to help. Like I said, so we'll talk about some of those issues in a minute. So our vision is that Free Centers, the most directly impacted women and girls, we believe in organizing an organization. We seek visionary alternatives to the current systems of injustice and incarceration. So what we do is we want to reimagine communities. What does it look like for women not to have to go to jail for 90% of the things that we currently incarcerate women for? All right, so here's our campaigns in a nutshell. And then I'm gonna go to the next slide because that's where we break it down most. But we have maternal infant health, we have housing, and we have healthcare for all. So all of our campaigns fit under one of these three slots here. And now when we talk about our goals, these are our campaigns laid out. So we have a Wisconsin prison doula program that we are presenting. Before we had a switch in the DOC secretary, because the DOC secretary just resigned and we don't know who the new DOC secretary is. We were 18 months out from doing a pilot program for a Wisconsin prison doula project. The doula project would go into the prison system, work with women who came into the system incarcerated, basically do Lamaze class, what to expect while you're expecting, talk to them about their nutrition, talk to them about lactation. And then during birth, they would obviously be there with that person. Currently in the state of Wisconsin, pregnant women birth alone. Well, alone meaning it's you, it's the medical staff, and it's 1 to 2, maybe sometimes 3 correctional officers are in the room with you. And so it's definitely not the situation that anybody wants. Or when you think of beautiful birth stories, that's definitely not, I've never heard anyone's birth story include that. So, and then postpartum, you continue with the doula. The doula continues to do education with you. They continue to educate you on things going on with your body. They continue to work with you on your lactation. There's a lactation room at Taycheedah. And so they make sure that mom is able to extract her milk and then able to get it to her infant. Also talk about postpartum depression. Again, we believe we can identify at least 2 women in Wisconsin prison system who are there because they had postpartum depression and did horrific things. And if they would have had intervention, they probably wouldn't have ended up there. So healthcare for all. We're super excited about this one. We just got a grant from Community Catalyst, and we're starting in Milwaukee County at the Community Reintegration Center, which used to be the House of Correction. And we have a health navigator who will be on site. We'll meet with every single person, including men, who are leaving the CRC, and they will all get signed up for Medicaid. So everyone leaving the CRC who is eligible for and not receiving medical insurance from somewhere else will be on Medicaid, meaning that They will be able to access, mental health care. They'll be able to access their physical health care, substance use disorder. They currently have a pilot program at CRC where they're giving Vivitrol to people. With the Medicaid, they'll be able to continue to get Vivitrol. They'll be able to get Vivitrol. They'll be able to continue the Vivitrol. So that's a wonderful thing for us. Like I said, in addition, for the women, we'll be able to get them information on circles of support. We'll be able to get them information on reproductive health, and we'll be able to have that warm handoff to Josephine, who is our free organizer in Milwaukee. The next, which I think most of you are familiar with, is our goal in life is to outlaw shackling in the state of Wisconsin. We've had a few hiccups. One of the hiccups is that we, as an organization, want shackling outlawed, period. If you have a positive pregnancy test, then we do not want you to be shackled in the state of Wisconsin. And there's much disagreement about that with legislators, right? So they are saying, well, we don't want to shackle women during active labor, during childbirth, and postpartum they have not given us a specific amount of time. When most of us who have delivered babies know that it's 6 weeks. I can't even drive a car for 6 weeks. Why should I be able to wear 35 pounds of chains within the first 6 weeks that I give? I can't even lift my baby. Sometimes they have a 10-pound weight restriction for women who have just had babies. Shackles weigh 35 pounds. So definitely not something that we want to do. So we were able to get the shackling bill circulated for co-sponsorship this time around. That's as far as it went. But we're going to continue to work on it, and hopefully we'll be able to get some consensus. We do know that the law enforcement association had some part in the language that was proposed this time around. We're hoping to meet with them, as well as the sheriff's association, although they were not as opposed to this as the law enforcement. So law enforcement has it in its head that, pregnant women who they encounter are just, wily creatures who want to beat them up, and that they need to be able to shackle them. Now, what's interesting is the last round of shackling, legislation clearly stated that it's not that we are outlawing the use of shackling, period. What we're saying is, if you feel like a woman needs to be shackled, or a girl needs to be shackled, a pregnant woman or girl, then you have to fill out a form that tells us why. Why was it? Was she combative? Did medical staff ask for that? What's going on? What was the underlying reason why we felt like we needed to do this? Because then at the end of the year, we can go in, we can request those reports, we can sit down with knowledgeable people, and they can take a look and say, this is legit, this is not legit. And then we can publish a report saying 95% of the shackles used on pregnant women and girls in the state of Wisconsin were not needed. They were not necessary. Or maybe we say 95% of them, were. And we're happy that we included this, piece of this in the legislation. So,
Peggy, a couple years ago, we tried to find out the percent or the number of women in our county jails in Wisconsin that were pregnant. I was told by several jails, we don't keep those statistics. They couldn't tell us. I don't know if that has changed, but they don't even document that. And oftentimes they're not even checking to see if somebody is pregnant. So I'm trying to figure out if part of the work can be that they also have to do a pregnancy test and keep records of how many pregnant women we have in jail.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's entirely true. I think they don't want to give up that information, but I will tell you, as a formerly incarcerated woman, the very first thing that they did in Milwaukee County was give me a pregnancy test, even though I was definitely past the reproductive age. They did definitely give me a pregnancy test from all of the information that I received from other women. That's pretty standard. So it's not that they don't know that women are pregnant, or that they're not documenting it. I think that it's probably that we're not asking for it the right way. So we have to figure out how do we do that? How do we ask for those for that information? All right, moving right along. Expanding circles. So we do both circles of support and circles of restoration, or what we call peacekeeping circles. And so we do these with people in reentry. We are currently now doing them with people who are incarcerated. This is one way that we also would welcome people to get involved, is to become trained, a trained circle keeper. And then the Wisconsin Division of Community Corrections helps us to refer people who are coming out. Again, now in Milwaukee County, we can also use the people coming out of the House of Correction, and we refer them to circles. This is before we started doing the Medicaid enrollment. This was as close to direct service as we come, because people come to circle and then we're also able to give them resources. And they come to circle and say, I'm having an issue with housing, I'm having an issue with finding a job, I'm having an issue with, and we're able to refer them other places. Housing for All. Housing for All is one of our campaigns that we're really excited about. We've partnered with formerly incarcerated people and families on a national level. We have two different campaigns going with Housing for All. One of them is that we wish to legislate a look back in the state of Wisconsin on the CCAP system. So CCAP not only keeps people from housing, but it also keeps people from employment. So we really want to be able to do that. And then the next thing with housing is that we're actually forming a statewide committee to take a look at whether or not Free wants to do brick and mortar transitional housing for women. We definitely know we want to do it in Fond du Lac for women with babies coming out of Tachita, but we're gonna do an exploratory committee to see if there's other places in Wisconsin that maybe we should be doing that. And then the housing justice, we literally just got a grant. We're super excited. It's a very small grant, but we're hoping we can build donations and really build this out. We currently have a wonderful relationship with 4 different alternative high schools in the city of Milwaukee. And Kathy was at the summit that we did at the Zufari Center, and we actually had young people there from the school. And so we are going to do a Youth Justice Policy Institute for these inner city students. And we are going to have them identify, as Judge Mitchell was talking about, what are some of the things that affect youth when it comes to justice impact. And let's get working on that. And let's not have it being led by adults. Let's have it be led by the youth. Let's take the youth up to Madison and have them talk about how they are not protected by the state of Wisconsin and how they feel like they need to be. And so we're super excited about getting that started next fall. Alrighty, we're coming to the end here. These are just some of the wins that we've had. We're really, again, proud of everything that we do. We have quarterly meetings with the DOC secretary. Through those meetings, we've been able to get some policy changes within DOC and DAI. We've been able to stop this terrible termination of parental rights bill that they've brought, I think, every year since 2019. And every year we hold a summit. This year our summit will be, we believe, in Outagamie County. So we're moving to the middle of the state. So for you ladies, that's closer to you. We hope that you will join us. And this is just a little bit of information on the circles of support and where they take place. So currently we do bi-weekly circles everywhere that we have a chapter. And we're doing bi-weekly circles in Green Bay. And we're also doing circles in the Eau Claire County Jail. We're doing them at the CRC, and we're doing them at Parsons House. And we're looking to expand this. So again, if you're interested and you're in a part of the county or a part of the state that is not on here, that is wonderful. Please contact me. And more. This is our wish list. So we hope to be in Fond du Lac. We'd love to be in Winnebago, Green Bay, both the county jail and in the community. And we would love to be in Appleton or actually anywhere in the state. We're not going to discriminate. Kenosha is another place that we're really interested in getting some more stuff going. And this is our Milwaukee chapter. And that's a little slide on when we have chapter meetings. Each of our chapter have chapter meetings once a month. We also have circle twice a month. So we try to keep our ladies engaged in what's going on. This is our Chippewa Valley chapter, which mostly includes Eau Claire right now, but we're looking to fan out. Like I said, here's how you can get involved. We have quarterly statewide meetings. What I would love is for you guys to contact me and say, my church, my civic group, my whatever, would love to do to host a viewing of Win. Win is a documentary about shackling, and Pamela Wynn, we look at as being the mother of the anti-shackling movement in the United States. But as Kathy was talking about personhood, there also is a really good documentary called Personhood. And it's about the state of Wisconsin. So you should definitely check that out. We are currently working on our membership, and we hope to have membership dues, but we do have a Give Butter page where you can contribute if you feel compelled to do so, and we're always really grateful. This is our latest endeavor. We are part of the National Council of Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. They do phenomenal things. When you talk about reimagining communities, my goodness, they knock my socks off. Let me just say that. That's not easy to do, but they do. So we will be joining them on April 24th in Washington, D.C. Our goal is to take 30 high school children with us so that they can be a part of this event as well. We're marching, and I saw that Kathy, thank you, had included the slides in the ongoing slides that we're playing during the break. But we want to be there. And so we are $5,000 short of our goal. We think that we can raise that. If you can help us, again, we have a Give Butter account, and we would definitely be grateful for your assistance. And many, many of the things that the National Council is working on, we are also working on. And how to connect with us. So if you've heard me mention someone's name, like Jenny up in Eau Claire, so it's JENNI at freemovement.org. If you want to, I'm going to drop my email in the chat, but if you'd like to contact me, I'm Peggy at freemovement.org. And then if you have a general question request, you can go through hello@freemovement.org. Although now that you know me, we're besties, you can contact me. I will definitely hook you up with whatever you need. So that is us in a very large nutshell. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Peggy. You are so amazing. And I think everybody has some ways that they can do something to work on this issue. I want to bring some context to this. Since I've been working on this for many, many years, we tried to get the anti-shackling bill. I testified in the legislature in 2017. We've had now 4 legislative sessions where it has never gotten a vote. And so I can't emphasize enough, and I'll put that in the calls to action. The people that are representing you in our state assembly and state senate are really important on these issues. And they may pass it out of committee. The first year it passed out of the committee 5-0. They supported this and it never got a vote. So the critical people who lead the Senate and Robin Vos in the Assembly, if they decide we're just not going to vote on something, it dies. So all the bills that were in this past session are now dead. We're going to have another election in November, and then they'll be working on the budget in January when they take office. And we have a golden time right now because we have some different maps. I won't call them fair, but they're fairer. And you may have a different voting place. You may have a different set of candidates. You may have different legislative representatives, but this is a critical election coming up for so many reasons. A few years ago, now I was in Waukesha County practicing for 27 years and then went to Milwaukee County at Frederick Medical College. The Waukesha County Jail must be much different than what Peggy's experience has been, because I had the highest risk patient I can recall. They brought her to me at 9 weeks. They bring them unannounced because they might be a flight risk. So they just show up in her office and we have to stop everything to see them. Great. Turns out she was pregnant with twins. She had a 13 and 14-year-old daughter. She had lost 2 babies at 22 and 23 weeks. Because of those early gestations, she had a classical C-section, meaning the incision on her uterus was up and down instead of across, which is a very risky situation for future pregnancies. She was also hypothyroid and needed to have thyroid medication. She was severely anemic and needed to have iron. She had an incompetent cervix, which is why she lost her other pregnancies. And so I had to put a cerclage, a stitch in her cervix to help her not miscarry too early. And she had a heroin use disorder. And so not only did she not get treatment, she was allowed to suffer because they wouldn't treat her withdrawal. And they wouldn't feed her properly. They were giving her bologna sandwiches. If anybody knows, what we tell pregnant women, don't eat lunch meat. And it certainly doesn't provide any iron. I mean, she was severely anemic. They couldn't give her the iron pills I ordered because they only passed meds once a day. They would give her thyroid, but you can't give thyroid medicine with iron or multivitamins because it inactivates it. So she couldn't get the medication she needed. She had twins, so she was huge, even early in her pregnancy. And they had a cot that was 6 inches off the ground that she could barely get up and down. It was everything that could be a hurdle for her pregnancy. And I, as a provider, could not provide for her. And I would write orders, and I was told by the court or the jail administrator and the nurse that they don't have to follow the doctor's orders. If they don't have medication that's ordered, too bad, you don't get it. So here she's, and she wanted these babies so much. She started contracting. At one point, about 25 weeks, they sent me a message saying they're going to start her on some depressant medication that is known to cause preterm labor. I said, hold the phone, stop. I said, she needs to be admitted to the hospital. She was in a locked cell with 24-hour lights on her, and they dropped her off at the front door of Waukesha Memorial with no attendant. There was no sheriff with her. They just dropped her off. I thought, something's wrong with this picture. So she was admitted, and then we kept her pregnant for another week or so, and she started contracting and bleeding. We had to take the stitch out. I did a cesarean section. The babies did well. We gave her steroids, so the babies were in NICU. I kept her in the hospital as long as I could, which was 5 days, because typically they have to be discharged sooner than that. She went back to Huber facility. At that point, in order to, and we had started her on substance use treatment, so she had to go to the methadone clinic. Now she had to walk. She had, like Peggy said, no money, no car, no home other than the Huber facility, very minimal clothes. She had no job, nothing. So she walked from the Huber facility in Waukesha to the methadone clinic in Waukesha to Waukesha Memorial Hospital to see her babies and spend all day with them. The policy at the hospital was, we can't give her food because that's just, she's not inpatient, so we can't give her food. And we tried to give her, the nurses would slip her medication or food so that she could have nourishment. And then she would walk back at the end of the day to the Huber facility. This went on for weeks. Eventually, the babies would put up for adoption, and she lost her babies. And at this point, I don't know where she's at, but with all the trauma that this person went through, I can imagine that maybe she's not even alive anymore, because we just gave her more and more and more trauma. And I think some things have improved. We are now treating some people. I don't think everybody's getting treatment, but we are treating. And we had a legislator in Oconomowoc who had a bill 2 sessions ago that if a woman delivered and had the infant had any substance in their body, that they would automatically terminate parental rights with no opportunity to regain them ever, and no trial, no court hearing. Luckily, that did not pass, but Barbara Dietrich in Oconomowoc is hell-bent to take away babies from mothers. The American Society of Addiction Medicine, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the AMA, a national group that I'm with, that physicians treating substance use disorder, are all trying to change policies in hospitals so they aren't testing babies to turn them over to Child Protective Services and end their custody. There are terrible things that have happened. I think things are improving, but this is a time when we can all do some things. Thank you so much, Peggy. I hope you'll stay on for some of the calls to actions, because I want you to maybe highlight some of those again. So we're going to go to that now. And okay, let me just change this. All right, so now's your time. You've heard a lot. You've got a lot of ideas. We'll review some of them. And at the end, when you do your evaluation, I want everybody to put at least one thing down that you're going to do. Okay, next slide, Lisa. So you heard about the solitary confinement day of action on Tuesday at the state capitol from 1 to 4 through wisdomwisconsin.org. You can register on that line, or if you just search Wisdom Day of Action, I think you'll get to it. What I believe is that there's going to be a room where they're going to give you some education, and then you're going to go to meet with state legislators. So we need to make this a reality that we have to end solitary confinement. Next slide. Peggy mentioned again, 80% of women in jails and 56% of women in prisons are mothers to children under 18, and a significant number of women are pregnant. This is the program she was talking about. It's in Washington, D.C. If you go to freemovement.org, you can donate to FREE and help them send another generation of activists to Washington, D.C. to help learn about how we can do this work. Next slide. I just want to make people aware. I'm going to be going to General Conference. I see Gail Burgess is on here. She's not able to go this year, but she's one of our delegates for jurisdictional conference in Wisconsin. I am not a voting delegate, but I am working with one of the church and society committees on some of our language and the social principles. And you can follow General Conference by live stream video. A lot of things are up for discussion and vote at General Conference. We have 3 main issues: regionalization, which will then come to local churches, and it's good to start learning about that. Revised social principles, and removing harmful language from our social principles, including the language about LGBTQ clergy and individuals. So that's a way that you can live stream and watch portions of our upcoming general conference. And we have in our social principles, we have information about care for incarcerated people.
Kathy?
Next, yes.
This is Lisa. I just wanted to add that on the wisconsinumc.org website, under
Yes.
news and events, we have a general conference page, actually pages, that have information about the legislative actions that are being brought up, the big ones, handouts, kind of a guide to general conference, the link to the live stream, all of that. So there's a lot of information there for you to get information about that.
Fantastic. And yes, we will share slides. There was a comment in the chat, and this will be available for unrecorded. So you can share this. You can have an event at your church and portion it out. You can do 2 segments, so it's not so long, but I encourage you to share this with many people that you know. It's so important to get the word out. There was just introduced this week, the Rural Obstetrics Readiness Act. This is a federal legislation. It's a Senate Bill 4079. This would create obstetric emergency training for rural care facilities that don't have a dedicated labor and delivery unit. So you may have heard that in Wisconsin, we have many areas that are obstetrical deserts. They don't have a birth facility and women have to drive many miles. And one of my colleagues had a woman trying to get from Marinette in the north part of the state to Green Bay, and the husband had to pull over at the side of the road and deliver the baby in the car. It's a serious problem in Wisconsin. But if you go to a critical access hospital, right now, they don't all have the facilities, the equipment, and the staff trained to take care of an emergency obstetrical problem. So this would also give them equipment and develop the workforce training, and also develop a statewide and regional network for teleconsultation to rural facilities with our bigger hospitals. And I see. One second. So contact your senators, Senator Tammy Baldwin and Senator Ron Johnson. I just sent emails to them directly. I also had this, I just came up in my American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists advocacy emails. So I sent it through the link. I'm trying to get Church and Society to put this on as an action alert. I was talking to Laura Kigueba with my maternal health team yesterday to get this as an action alert through our National Church and Society. Reverend Kate Jones from Wauwatosa is also going to General Conference, and she is one of the delegates. She's going to be running for the Judicial Council. She was nominated as a person to be a candidate for the Judicial Council. This is a very important position. So we want to congratulate Kate that she is going to be hopefully elected to be on the Judicial Council. Thanks for sharing that, Kate. Okay, so call your legislators, put that down on one of the to-do lists, or write them an email. And I will have more information if you want to get in contact with me. If you want, more details, I can share that with you. Next slide. When you call or write to your legislators, these are important. You must identify yourself as a constituent, or it will go out the window and into the trash base. They will not take any information to heart. If you are not a constituent, they don't even want to talk to you. So you must tell them your address and say that you are a constituent. Focus on a single topic. In this case, it's Senate Bill 4079. So, and give them the name of the bill and be very specific on that. Ask your legislator to take a specific action. Right now, we're asking them to co-sponsor this bill. And at this point, it's just been introduced. So now process is to get co-sponsors. We're hoping to get bipartisan support. So it's important to get both of our senators to be co-sponsors. We'll see if that happens, but I know where Senator Baldwin has been a champion of women's health and access to health care and so many important things, insurance reform. So she will, I'm sure, co-sponsor this. Make your points quickly and concisely and use your own words. Put it into whatever you would say so that it's not just the form letter that they're getting from everybody else. And I can't tell you, they keep track of how many people write, and our state legislators do too. My colleague, Dr. Sheldon Wasserman was in the state legislature for a number of years, and someone kept calling every week and harassing his legislative assistant. And finally, Dr. Wasserman said, look up and see what that person's voting record is, just if they vote or not. And it turns out that person had not voted in any elections for the last 10 years. And so he told the administrative person when they start voting, then they can, let him know what their views are, but to stop harassing this person, because, one of the first things we must do is vote. All right, care for incarcerated. Pardon?
I have a question, and I do understand, yes, they respond much better to your own words than to, like, say, a form letter. But could we be provided maybe with some, 3 or 4 talking points that we could then put into our own words?
Yep. And I'll send you the message I sent to them, as well as a 1-pager and the language that I just posted.
Great, thank you.
Okay. As Peggy talked about, we have been trying with Senator Lena Taylor since 2017 to get care for incarcerated pregnant women. And we want to make sure that, one, they stop shackling pregnant women, but also that they all get medication-assisted treatment for substance use disorder, that they get adequate prenatal care, that they're brought on regular intervals. Sometimes it's many weeks between when they're brought in for care, that they have STI testing and treatment. And at Waukesha, I was told that's expensive and our county doesn't want to pay for that. Yet, these are people that are much higher risk for sexually transmitted infections because of the home situations that they're in, because of intimate partner violence, because some of them are involved or forced to be sexually prostituted. So there's many reasons why they need to have this, and it's healthier for them and the baby. They should all get mental health screening and treatment. Sometimes it can be months before they get to see the mental health provider. And as I said, the first year it was passed, but never got a vote. And the 2 law enforcement agencies that Peggy mentioned, our lobbyists for the American College of OBGYN, and I had meetings, virtual meetings with them, and there is great reluctance. They think that these women are just going to escape, and there's no documented cases of that in the US. So this is not, a problem of them running away. Next, elections. Confirm you are registered. Know your voting place. It might be new. Mine has changed 3 times now. Learn about the candidates. Find out what their voting record is if they've been in office. And if there's new ones, find out what they stand for. Volunteer to canvass or call or write cards. You can do a lot of work. Like I said, we increased our Brookfield City Democratic percentage from 35% to 45% over the last 2 elections. And we've gone door to door canvassing at all the potential homes. And I'm not telling you what party to support, but I do want you to support the issues that we believe in as United Methodists, and that would be the kind of treatment that Christ would want us to do. and bring 3 more voters with you. I call my kids every election, make sure that they've got it on their schedule. They know that today's the day to vote. And I talk to people all over the community about getting out to vote. Next. I've been a part of the United Methodists for Reproductive Justice. I was founding member with a few other clergy and church and society leader since 2018 when I was testifying against the 20-week abortion ban in the legislature. And I looked up our social principles and saw what the language was. And I was a little bit shocked to see some of the language that was in our social principles. We now have a revised social principles that will be voted on at General Conference. I am working with the committee on a couple of things in the language. One of our principles says that our church supports critical access centers. What the reality is, the sole purpose of crisis pregnancy centers is that they want to prevent that woman from having termination. As provider, I must give people every option that's available, that's legal, and I can't coerce them. I have to let them make the decision with all the information, risks and benefits. And if you go to a crisis pregnancy center, there will be coercion, there will be bribery, they will give you diapers and food. That doesn't necessarily continue after you have a baby, but they also give you false information about the risks and the mental health concerns and cancer concerns and much information that is not accurate. So I want to amend that principle when I'm working with the committee at General Conference. There's also a statement in there about a specific procedure that we use that's the safest way for a woman who has a stillbirth and needs to have the uterus evacuated, but that's got a medical procedure listed that should not be in our social principles. And we as a church, our conference reaffirmed in 2022 at annual conference that we support the right for women to have access to legal, safe abortion. It doesn't mean everybody's going to do that. It's a personal decision, but we want it to be safe and legal. So if you would like to join us, we just had a 4-part Lenten series with a pastor from Minnesota, Kate Freilich, and a pastor from Texas, Barbara Dunlap, Keller Hawkins, who I think is in either Virginia or one of the Carolinas, and myself and Laura Kidgueba. It's available on YouTube. It's wonderful. Next slide. We also had Dr. Kate Ott from Garrett Theological Seminary. She is a Christian ethicist with specialization in sexuality and reproduction. And she is the Mary Jo Steed Professor of Christian Social Ethics at Garrett. She spoke, if you're familiar with the Faith and Facts cards, we did this in 4 segments. What does the United Methodist Church say? What does the Bible say? What are the facts and what do you say? And Kate gave an excellent presentation on what does the Bible say. And one of the key comments that she made that I took home was, the Bible does not speak, it is read and interpreted. There's not one ethic. And as we readers bring our ethics to our reading, we need to take that into account. There is nothing in the New Testament about abortion. There are frequently cited verses from the Old Testament, and she went through each of those to explain what the intent was of those verses, and it was focused on the woman and what happens if a woman is in a certain situation and how we should care for the mother. So I welcome you to share this with your local units. It's a 4-part series, and it's I think it's really a great way to educate people, and bring discussion. We're not all going to agree. We're never going to all agree. That's just the way it is. But we need to have difficult discussions and share ideas. And
I will
yes,
also say those are now also on the conference website under Church
Yes.
Society. So you can find them
Yes.
there if you'd like as well.
Great, thank you. And we also now, thanks to Lisa and Robin Kelby, we have the page up for the Our Whole Lives Sexuality and Faith program that we approved in 2022 as well for our conference. I have a petition at General Conference to approve that for the entire Methodist Church, and I'm hoping to see that that get passed. But we're going to do some education when we're at General Conference. I think that is all I have. Oh, valuations. Make sure you fill out your evaluation before we go. I'm going to have Peggy give us any last words that she would like to say about free and what we can do. And then we'll close with a prayer from Linda. Peggy, did you want to say anything?
Oh, no, I just want to encourage you all to reach out to me. Again, like if you're really interested in exploring another situation, I'm very, very happy. I just really too quickly want to say that one of the things that we work on, which we are not funded to do, but it means a lot to us, is we're working on Unlock the Vote. In the state of Wisconsin, currently, people who are on probation or parole cannot vote. And so that's why I shot back my comments about the previous legislators' comments about I don't contact people who haven't voted in the last 10 years. There are legitimate reasons why people don't vote. And so I'm kind of happy to say, and I do know Dr. Wasserman, and I've served with him on the county board. He's kind of a dinosaur. And I'm happy about that because I think people now in the legislature do realize that there are legitimate reasons why people don't vote and they don't check. The other thing with the legislature and with your county board is that you may be contacting a person who sits on a specific committee that's dealing with an issue that you care about, who's not your necessarily your representative. You still should be reaching out to that person. So democracy needs everyone. We firmly believe that, and we hope that you remember that as you go forth. And again, if there's ever anything that we can do, if you'd like to host a screening of either Personhood or or we also do another one called Tutwiler, which is on the Prison Doula Project in Alabama. We can put together a panel for you, or any of the other things that I talked about today or that Kathy has brought about. Again, you're very fortunate to be led by Kathy, who's very informed and progressive in what needs to be done in the state of Wisconsin. I saw somebody did ask about prison closures. We believe prison closures, they're right within our reach. Again, it's all about reimagining communities and developing as a people. How do we want to deal with people? Do we want to deal with them in the way that our faith teaches us, which is that everyone's worthy and everyone should be provided treatment and programming and things that they don't receive in the prison system? Or do we simply want to say we're mad at you because what you did was unacceptable to us as a society, and therefore we want to throw you away and take you out of our reach for a few years or maybe for the rest of your life? So I really appreciate you ladies being here and caring about these situations and having a conference like this. And again, kudos to Judge Mitchell because he's always right on time, and I'm very blessed to be able to follow him today, as again we have very similar backgrounds and situations, and could have gone either way for us. So I think we both landed very well, and I thank you again for your time.
And you put a message in the chat that there's a critical need for public defenders. I totally agree. And I've been at hearings where they were trying to decide how much to increase public defenders were getting paid hardly anything, and they did increase that somewhat, but not enough. And we need more public defenders, but it's a hard job. They are overworked, and yes, absolutely, we need that. Okay, thank you again. And Linda, can you please close us in prayer, and send us off? And there you
There
go.
we go. There was a lot that we heard, and so much of it to me was some darkness. So I'm going to cling to Psalm 139 before I close, that even the darkness, sorry, will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is light to you. Thank you. Let us pray. Dear God of all, and of those who suffer unfairly, how we thank you, Jesus, for this time to be in your midst, to come together, to listen, to learn. You have come to teach us how to live life well. You created us in your image to be loved and worthy of your love. But too often there are those who have turned away from you and from your teachings and have paid the price of incarceration. But for you, that is not the end. For every morning, your mercy and forgiveness are brand new, just waiting for us to receive it. Lord, open our eyes so we may see, our ears so we may hear, and transform our hearts so not to judge too quickly, especially as we hear of those who remain stuck in poverty and sin and circumstances beyond their control and have not help or are found in a broken system. Oh, we need you, Lord. May we be your people, and as the Bible teaches, may we remember those who are in prison as though we were in prison with them. Oh God, help us continue to strive to follow you as we do your good work, to become the woman of faith that you have created each one of us to be. This we pray in the power and love of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen. And thank you all. Enjoy this. I hope it's sunny in the whole state. It's sunny here in Brookfield. So go out and get some fresh air and just kind of ponder what we've heard today. This is going to take a lot of time to really, bring this home and kind of let it impact us in a very positive way. And Peggy says, gracias. Thank you, Peggy. All right. Thank you all.